I'm looking at the Ready Player One poster right now. It's just reminding me of so many things that were wrong with the movie. Okay, yep. We are live. Hello, YouTube audience, all ye fans of Noob Reaction and Hostel Discourse. Thanks for joining, and feel free to comment in the live chat. We like to see your thoughts there. And we will get started. So I'll do the podcast intro. One sec.
Mike, can you hear David right now? Because I can't hear him.
Nope. Dave?
Hello, hello.
There you are.
Now I can hear you. Okay.
Oh,
What's going on?
I could hear Mike, but I couldn't hear you.
what the heck here? Yeah, never mind. Sorry, I was muted.
Ah.
I'll do that again.
Were you doing the whole intro?
Yeah.
I saw you talking.
Why didn't you say anything?
I wasn't looking at my screen. I was looking at the Ready Player One poster on my other computer.
I thought maybe it was just my computer or something at first. But
Okay. All right. Well, take two. Hey, everyone. Welcome to episode 34 of Hostel Discourse. We have another fun episode planned for you tonight. We'll be reviewing the book and movie versions of Ready Player One, which just came out in theaters a couple weeks ago, as well as debating what is the best book to movie adaptation of all time. I wish I could say Ready Player One was one of our choices for the debate tonight, but unfortunately it didn't make the cut. As always, the show notes will be, or the time codes will be in the show notes. So just swipe up and you can skip to the debate if you don't want to hear Ready Player One spoilers. We'll start out a little high level and spoiler free, and then the show notes will say when spoilers are being talked about. But first, let me introduce you to tonight's crew, starting with frequent guest, my older brother, Mike Rolfing, now a father with baby in hand as we speak. Welcome back, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah, if you hear any coos or cries, it is not myself. It is baby Ellie.
We'll excuse any obstructions.
If she gets too out of hand, I will remove her from the premises.
Sounds good. And back again, my faithful co-host, Joe Kuiper.
Hello, everybody. I do not have a baby with me, so that's good.
Yes, that is good. And Jacob Hunter will be joining us for the debate, but he didn't want to talk about Ready Player One spoilers because I think he's thinking about reading the book. So we'll get started without him, and he'll join us soon. All right, so I'll start off. I'll read the IMDb summary of the movie. When the creator of a virtual reality world called The Oasis dies, he releases a video in which he there's a typo on IMDb. A video game in which he challenges all Oasis users to find his Easter egg, which will give the finder his fortune. Steven Spielberg directed it, written by Zach Penn, Ernest Cline, who wrote the book, and it stars Ty Sheridan, Ben Mendelsohn, and a few others. But we can start with our thoughts on the book. I think Mike and I both listened to the audiobook. Did you read the actual book, Joe, or did you do the audiobook as well?
No, I read the actual book. Bought it
Cool.
and read it.
And I read 3/4 of the book and then listened to the last part of it because I was on vacation and then I had to drive 9 hours, so I finished it in the car.
Nice. Well, I listened to the full audiobook, so we have three slightly differing experiences. But I can start. I really enjoyed the book. It has a lot of fun references. Obviously, a little bit maybe too much at times, relying on. At times, it seems like the author is kind of like just putting every single 80s reference he can in the book, proving how much he knows. But for the most part, they use a lot of those to advance the plot, and like knowing some of those nerdy or pop culture references is satisfying because you can, you have some prior knowledge of what's going on. We can get into some more details when we go into spoilers, but I really enjoyed the book. I thought that, it's not my favorite book in the world, but all of the video game references and anime references and movie references from the 80s are all really fun. It's just a fun book, and not such a fun movie, but I'll get into that later. Joe, what did you think of the book?
Yeah, I was a huge fan of the book. I kind of felt after finishing it that if the book had been like 20 years forward in kind of my childhood range, where like, I don't know, if it had been more about Halo and Skyrim and 90s music, it probably would have been my favorite book. But obviously a lot of 80s stuff was before my time, so some of those references were lost on me, but the book itself is still great. And just like the idea of that as a possible dystopian future was a really cool concept, and I liked where he went with it and everything. So yeah, great book.
Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, the book was recommended to me by a couple pop culture loving friends. I do not read books unless I have to. So it was a big step for me to grab that and go. Like I said, I was on vacation for a week and just chilling at the lake, and so I needed something to do in the sun. And I sat and read it, and really enjoyed it. Along with Joe, I'm a little older than Joe, but some of the references were lost on me as well. I've never seen the movie War Game.
Yeah,
with Matthew Broderick. I probably should see it, but I was still able to appreciate what was done with all of the references, with all of the challenges the characters had to do, and overall, really enjoyed the ride. And David,
yeah.
Real quick, the IMDb is correct because he did release a video to explain.
You're right. Yeah.
Easter egg.
To explain the Easter egg in the video game.
Yeah, right.
You're right. Yeah. A lot of the references, especially the older video games, which are pretty key in the plot to the book at different stages, I had never heard of or seen gameplay of, but I would just pull up a YouTube video of the old classic game that he was playing, and so I could kind of get a feel of what it looked like, because they're really descriptive in the book of the different games he's playing at different parts. So that was kind of fun to learn some of those old classic video games that they talked about and that he played. But yeah, Joe, you mentioned if they were using kind of more modern references, like that might make it more interesting, but they kind of did that in the movie. They switched it up and had some more modern references in there. But yeah, I don't know. I guess there could kind of be two different versions of the book. There could be, 80s there could be any decade. You could swap out different parts of the story for different pop culture references, but the movie definitely changed a lot of stuff up. Well, I guess that can be our high-level book review, and now we can give our high-level movie review and then just dive right into spoilers. But I guess we can start with Joe. What did you think of the movie, high level?
I thought it was a decent movie. And like, I think if I hadn't read the book, I would have liked it more. But I think that happens to a lot of people that read a book and then go see the movie. But a few of the like main things that I felt were lacking. Well, actually, I probably shouldn't say those until the spoiler section. But yeah, decent. Definitely some stuff lacking from the book that I thought should have been in there, though.
I just remembered we saw it together.
We did.
Yeah. Yep. In Tulsa before I moved out here. Yeah, I'm in Denver, Colorado now. I think we mentioned that on last episode. Last week, it was the first episode I wasn't on. So yeah. It was fun to listen to something not having been in the recording previously.
Yep.
Mike, what'd you think of the movie?
I enjoyed it. It was fine. I intentionally sought out a nice theater with Dolby Atmos surround sound because I figured that would only help it. So that was an overall good experience. I think the movie has its moments. There's a couple scenes that I really really liked. On a whole, it was just it was fine. One of the biggest complaints I've heard about the book is that it has too many references, kind of how you mentioned, David. There's just so many things peppered in and so many things that I guess it becomes a little overwhelming or just too saturated. I honestly thought the movie didn't have enough of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was probably my biggest complaint, which I suppose we could dive in a little bit more later. It almost like glossed over a lot of the super in-depth, or like, I guess I'm trying to say I wish there was more like ahas and more like, oh, they did that, or more, wow, they're inside that movie now. Like really throwing that stuff at us and really be this like ride through pop culture. And it really was just kind of like a ride through this generic story with pop culture things peppered into it.
Yeah, good description. Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing this movie does really well is the visuals, and the CG is definitely unique because it's not supposed to look real because it's supposed to be a video game. So I think they made the avatars look pretty cool, at least the main characters, as far as their skin and just the unique way they looked. Besides that, I really disliked every other aspect of the movie. And if I hadn't have read the book, I would have probably felt similarly, not as jaded, I guess, but yeah, there's a lot of movies based on books that book fans hate because you obviously can't put everything from a book into the movie. But I feel like this movie left out so many key things that they should have kept in there and that they could have kept in there. They just chose to go this different route, which changed most things about the book. So I didn't like the movie. Only a couple cool kind of action scenes, I guess. But besides that, I'd like to get into some more details of why I didn't like it. So this can be the spoiler alert. And I'll put this in the time code for you to see and to skip past to the debate. Okay, so I guess first things first, the characters are just so underdeveloped in the movie. The character in the book, you get a little more background on him. You get a lot more background into like the world of a gunter and what work they've had to do to research the 80s, to research the guy who made the video game. What's his name again? It was 2 weeks ago. We can't remember.
I can remember Ogden Morrow, but not the other guy. James Halliday was it.
Halliday. Okay. Yeah, and Sorrento was Ben Mendelsohn.
Mm-hmm.
What was I saying?
Character development.
Yeah. So many, just like the love story between the main two characters is so pathetic. Like they skip from meeting and hanging out a couple times to him saying, "I'm in love with you." And so many added characters like TJ Miller's IROC, who's just like that bounty hunter guy that Sorrento uses. He's a completely new character. They changed so many things about each character. It's just so many things that frustrate me about this movie. One of you go. What you can go into some spoilers.
Well, two things I wanted to address about the character development things was, number one is that Artemis, the main girl, like kind of the whole point of the book is that they're all like individual gunters, not teamed up gunters. And then all of a sudden you find out that Artemis is working with like this underground society and like trying to take down Like where did that even come from? All of a sudden, she just has all these like cronies working for her, and then out of nowhere they get busted. Like that whole part messed with me. And then also the love story was kind of the focal point of the book, and like the big reveal at the end, like, oh, he finally at the very end of the book gets to see this girl, and like that was halfway through in the movie, and it felt very underwhelming and like not hyped up at all. So
yeah, as well as the whole thing in the book is like in the virtual world you can look however you want to, and so they're all like beautiful people or whatever, and then they're actually, you know, below average in real life. But that's not the case at all.
Artemis has a birthmark. Oh
yeah.
I mean,
that was one of the very eye roll things for me. Yeah, she's supposed to be like not that attractive, I guess, which is the point. And then the big reveal is she has this like subtle birthmark on her face, and that's supposed to be like her being ugly. I don't know. That was just really silly.
Well, the birthmark's in the book too, but it's described a little more ugly, I guess.
Yeah, she looked like a very normal, perfectly fine-looking girl.
Yeah. Another thing is, in the book, they do a better job of kind of telling you what situation the whole world is in and how messed up and impoverished like a lot of the world is. Yeah. In this movie, and then hit the stacks where he lives are in Oklahoma City in the book. In the movie, they were in like Ohio or something. I'm sure, Joe, you were happy about that.
I was so sad that they didn't put him in Oklahoma City though for the stacks. Yeah, so it would have been a little OKC reference.
Because they show the stacks, and yeah, it's like, wow, this is really impoverished. And then when they go outside of the stacks, it looks like a normal city they're in, and nobody is like struggling or impoverished. When they're driving around, there's just like normal people playing on their VR sets, but it just doesn't feel like the same world outside of the stacks as it did in the book.
Let's talk about a few good things. You guys are always so negative about everything.
easier to bash than to compliment, I guess.
There's a couple big set pieces in this movie that were fun. The first, though I don't think this is in the book at all, is that race.
Nope, it's not.
Which was just loaded with fun pop culture references. You get the Jurassic Park T-Rex, which is a Spielberg nod to himself.
Yeah.
You get King Kong. I'm trying to think what else pops up in that. He's driving the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Yeah. If anything, Steven Spielberg's very good at staging an action sequence. And I think that one was generally fun despite being completely fabricated for the movie. Though my favorite sequence in the movie, which made me just yearn for what else they could have done, is the sequence where they end up inside The Shining. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen that Stanley Kubrick movie.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, but when they first cut to that hotel and that famous hallway and the famous hedge maze, I was very impressed by that, and I was hoping and was sorely disappointed that they would do that with like 5 more movies within the movie. Mm-hmm. For those of you who haven't seen it and are listening to spoilers, basically they're trying to solve these clues in order to figure out where Halliday hid these Easter eggs within the game, and if you find all the Easter eggs, you then win the Oasis and you become a billionaire. And anyway, some of the clues lead them to, is it his first date with his wife? Some date with his wife where they went and saw The Shining, and so they enter this movie theater and they end up inside the movie. And I'm not sure how they did it, but Spielberg completely recreated these locations from The Shining so accurately that, I mean, they might have just pulled screen. I don't know how they did it. And the characters end up inside the movie. And then it kind of blows up from there. But just the fact that he pulled that off, and Spielberg's also was friends with Stanley Kubrick. He ended up, the movie AI, which has mixed reviews with Haley Joel Osment. It was supposed to be a Kubrick movie, and Spielberg took it over after Stanley Kubrick died. So they're close friends, and it was just a great tribute, I guess, really to his mentor. Again, despite not being in the book, it was still a really, really impressive scene.
Yeah, and the movie that they go into in the book was Monty Python, which is hilarious in the book, and that would have been hilarious. But obviously, I think a lot of the choices they made for the movie were based off of which rights they could get to which properties. But the Shining scene definitely worked well, and it was entertaining and funny. A little strange.
Yeah, I wanted the Holy Grail so bad.
Yeah.
They do have the Holy Hand Grenade. That's the one reference.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they didn't even use that right. Like, it would have been funny if he was like 1, 2, 5 when he threw it or something.
Yes, I know. I wish
something he just kind of tossed it in there, but
3, sir. I do have the entire Holy Hand Grenade directions memorized. I had to do a monologue in drama class. My senior year of high school, I took drama 1, and we had to do a monologue. And I was like, well, what can I do that I actually enjoy? And I memorized the entire "and Saint Attila raised the holy hand grenade up on high," saying, and I did the whole thing in this terrible British accent.
Great choice, though.
And the people did feast upon the lambs and sloes and carp and breakfast cereals and orangutans and fruit bats.
So many good options for that. I feel like I would have done like Gandalf's speech to Pippin in Minas Tirith or something like that.
Yeah, people have always picked these lame monologues that are just like from the book that the teacher gives you. I'm like, no, I'm gonna do Holy Grail. Which, yeah, I was very disappointed that didn't show up in there. You know, there was and like you said, David, the rights issue was probably the biggest issue, but there's so much they could have done. And even with more Spielberg stuff, he was quoted early on saying he didn't really want to have much of his own stuff in the movie, which was honestly one of the biggest disappointments for me, because I would have loved to have Indiana Jones and E.T. and more Jurassic Park. And, you know, he is the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, Back to the Future is Spielberg, to an extent. He executive produced it, maybe produced it, but those were directed by Robert Zemeckis. You know, the very beginning of the movie was promising. They had that sort of, when they were describing what the Oasis is, he was like, you can go mountain climbing with Batman. And, you know, they kind of threw a few random things in there. But if they would, like, instead of world hopping to like that nightclub where they're floating around, and if they would have gone to like the nightclub from Boogie Nights, or, you know, if they would have like been able to go to the Death Star, like if the sequences would have taken place in things we would recognize, I think that would really help. Like, if I'm in the Oasis, I'm going to the Death Star. I'm going to the temple where the ball rolls after Indiana Jones. You know, I'm going to, you know, my favorite movie locations, my favorite TV locations, as opposed to these just things they created for the movie. But again, rights issues are probably the biggest things.
Yeah, but I totally agree that one of the strongest scenes was the hotel in The Shining. That's because we recognize it. And it's like, wow, we're back in this place. But the racetrack city is completely, you know, just from nothing. The dance place is just made up. Even the castle at the end, I don't think that's a castle from any movie, is it? It's just like made up, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that would have been like at Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
It would just, that's what I was saying earlier in the non-spoiler section, is I wish they would have hit us over the head more with that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well just go for it, because you're already going for it.
Too bad it wasn't a Disney movie. They would have had the rights to everything.
Yeah, that's true. So, yeah, again, it was fine. It was fun to some extent. But I just was underwhelmed by what they were able to pull off.
Yep.
Also, the fact that the girl can like hide behind that chair in the most high-tech building ever created. There's this stupid scene where they're like in the bad guy's control room, and in this heavily fortified building, and the girl is literally just hiding behind his chair, and they can't find her.
And that part in the book to me was so cool when he like infiltrates it and like it's all part of his plan and he has it all worked out. I thought that was cool. So I was a little sad they didn't incorporate that in as well. They were kind of just like, oh, she got captured and escaped.
The other thing that confused me immediately, and I don't remember how this is addressed in the book, so one of you who have read it more recently may be able to enlighten me, but the like physics or logistics of how the rigs, the VR rigs actually work. You know, so all these people, right? Yeah. So all these people, you know, they tap into this online or this the Oasis is this virtual reality world, and they all have their own headsets and what do you call them, haptic feedback suits, and so they can feel and be in this world. But it
can you feel this?
Right. It seemed like that was kind of hot. No, he's like glowing red, you know.
Yeah.
But it seemed like every single person had their own version of the technology.
Yeah.
Some people are like hanging from wires. Some people have like these pads that they can walk on. So if they're in a small space, they can still move around. But then at the end, during the big battle, at the end, there's this massive battle where all these characters come together and there's this huge fight. They keep cutting to the real world where like everyone in the real world is participating in this because they're all in this virtual reality world. But there's some people like running down the street holding fake guns. And there's some people like in the back of vans that are driving around and like, and basically tipping over. Like there's no like rhyme or reason to how any of that actually works. And it was just like, you can look past it, I suppose. But when I specifically remember seeing these people are just like running down the sidewalk, you know, in this battle, and then you cut to the battle and they're running through these fields. But what prevents them from slamming into a pole or something?
Yeah. The whole theme of like the whole world is stuck, or the whole world is so crappy that they're all in this VR video game. Like that's such a cool theme, and that's been used in other shows like Sword Art Online and others. Like people want to be in this world because it's way cooler than the normal world. But in the movie, people are running around outside playing this game, which it's just not consistent at all. They could have split it up into like, you have the basic full body suit, so yeah, you can move around to control your character, and then they have the super high-tech advanced chair thing that Sorrento's in. But if they could have like split it up into those two groups instead of having, you know, every single variant of that would have made a lot more sense.
And then Ben Mendelsohn's like in a chair. I don't even know how that one worked.
Yeah.
Well, and I think like in the book they describe it like you can do it in a chair and like your hands control your legs, kind of a thing.
Okay. All right.
So, like, I don't get why. Yeah, like what you were saying, I don't get why they didn't just have the people standing still controlling. You know, because like you're just gonna run into stuff. That's not a plausible way to do.
Run over by that van that's hurtling.
Yeah, like that's not virtual reality right there. So I don't know.
Yep. One other thing that was a little strange, the Simon Pegg's character, Ogden Morrow, we're supposed to believe that he's like the librarian guy 100% of the time, showing people around to the past memories and everything. That would be the most boring video game job ever.
Yeah.
I don't even want to get into that whole library and how that works.
Yeah. Yep.
I think one thing that's hard about something like this movie is we're so used to now TV shows that are movie quality. What I mean by that is, you know, we get entire like 10 episode seasons to get invested in characters and things like that. I just started watching Westworld. I don't know if either of you have watched that.
Yep.
And I'm 4 or 5 episodes in, and you know that's 5 hours of content that you're just starting to get the hang of who some of these people are. Mm-hmm. But that's just how TV shows work, and so we roll with it. And with movies, I feel like if this movie came out 15, 20 years ago, people would like it a lot more. You know, you're talking about, oh, there's no character development, there's no yada yada yada. But like, is there much character development in the original Star Wars movie? Like, Luke's a farm boy, Han's a scoundrel, Leia's a princess, Obi-Wan's wise. You don't get much more than that. In Ready Player One, what do you get? This kid's poor, this guy's bad,
This girl's a birthmark.
Right. Yeah. Right? You know what I mean? Like, you don't. But we're so used to like these in-depth character studies and things that are so popular these days that movies like this are tricky. And I think, it was a big popcorn blockbuster. It had a lot of sort of just cliche action movie tropes. But like I said, if it was 20 years ago, 10, 15 even, like, we may think of it a little differently.
Yeah, and I think that kind of points back to like what you said earlier, where this movie was never going to be super strong on the character development. So like the main area they were going to be strong on was the like pop culture references, and like you said, I don't know if they did a great job with that. So definitely true.
Yep. So I will say, I'm really glad Steven Spielberg's back in the make just a really fun movie mode. I enjoyed The Post, which he made in like a few months, which is pretty impressive. Bridge of Spies was kind of meh. He's made a lot of serious movies of late, and I hope that he can. Well, he is doing Indiana Jones 5, so I guess we'll cross our fingers for that one.
Oh no! All right, let's give it a rating. I will give it a. What's an object from the movie?
I don't even remember.
I got it. I'll give it 2 haptic chest gropes out of 5.
Haptic chest gropes. I'll give it a 3.4 out of 5.
For what? What are the units?
I don't know. 3.4 holy hand grenades out of 5 holy hand grenades.
I was gonna do the holy hand grenade.
Sorry.
You can use mine if you want. I don't think you can get more creative than that.
My baby's stirring. She almost made it through this part. I give it 2.75 weird prisoner cells out of 5.
Yes. All right. Well, that is our review of Ready Player One book and movie. And look who it is. Jacob Hunter has joined us for the debate segment. Welcome, Jacob.
Thanks. You won't hear me. I'm not recording yet.
Okay.
I was gonna say that was impeccable timing. You appeared just in time.
Well,
right. Well, I need to pause anyway. I need to pause anyway and move my child upstairs.
Cool.
Do you want me to just keep rolling, Dave?
Yeah, just keep rolling, and we can entertain the how many people we got watching? 2 people watching the live. Shout out to Luke, cool for gaming. Do you know who that is? He said hello, Jacob. No.
No. I don't.
Say hi to my child.
Amazing.
Hello, child.
What's their name?
This is Ellie.
I assume a daughter.
Yes.
That's awesome. It gives me great hope that you're able to stay up this late for an episode of a podcast.
Yeah.
After little time.
I'm not working this week, so I'm pretty darn flexible.
That's nice.
Too bad you didn't have Ellie for the Disney podcast. It would have been a nice.
Yeah, we could do the Lion King thing.
Yeah.
Can you say something? Can you say something? She is wide awake right now. You might be able to chill for a little while longer. Oh, yeah.
Oh, there she is. Excuse me.
All right, you need to go upstairs?
Let me run some checks first.
Say hi to Joe.
Hello. She's cute.
You You gonna sleep or what?
Jacob, you still going with Prince of Egypt?
Oh, he's muted.
He's muted.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Joe, Jurassic Park, right? Yep.
Not to speak too soon, but Prince of Egypt is a brilliant choice.
It came to me in a stroke of inspiration.
Were you reading your Bible?
I wish I could say yes, but
It did take me a second to be like, what book is that based on?
Joe.
All right, Jacob, are you recording?
Yeah. Wait, no, I'm not. No, I am.
All right, let's reclap.
All right. I'm attempting to keep my child with me. We'll see how this goes.
Okay.
I'm gonna snap.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. All righty. Jacob, pretend I just said welcome, and then you can say, welcome to the show, Jacob.
Thanks, David. Glad to be here, and welcome to the human race, young Ellie, who I just got my first glimpse of.
Yes, the first hostile baby.
I will say I was guaranteed no spoilers, but I did tune in to this broadcast just to get the rankings. So now I feel like there are crucial plot details that have been revealed just from your ranking systems.
Wow.
For my haptic chest groping.
Yeah. But I can forget that.
Alrighty, let's move on to the debate. And the question tonight is, what is the best book to movie adaptation of all time? So this is not an easy one. There are lots of good options out there. Mike is going to be our judge. I don't think you've judged before, Mike.
No, I judged. I can't remember what it was.
Episode 2 or something.
No, it was. Gosh, what was I on? Not the Disney one. It was what was before that? Star Wars. Is there some debate on the Star Wars episode?
I don't think so.
All right, sorry. I've definitely done it before.
I was gonna say, try to base it off of our arguments, not which movie is your favorite.
Okay, got it. I will be as unbiased as I possibly can.
Sounds good. Okay. Let's start with Joe. What's your pick?
My pick comes to us from the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Crichton, in the form of Jurassic Park. And I think that an important distinction to be made about my movie is that, wait, do you want me to go into arguments or just say my movie?
30-second intro. So,
okay. I think an important distinction to be made here is that books and movies are obviously two very different mediums for delivering content. So I think that it's important to play upon the strengths that each one offers. And I think that a movie book combo like Jurassic Park is arguably the best way to do that. And I'll argue that later.
Alrighty. Jacob, known for his unique picks and debates, what is your pick?
What if I told you that in the early 2000s, DreamWorks put together an animated film starring Val Kilmer, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Danny Glover, Jeff Goldblum, Patrick Stewart, Steve Martin, Helen Mirren, Martin Short, amongst an amazing musical cast, to adapt one of the oldest stories in humankind to film? Would you believe me? What if I showed you The Prince of Egypt? I need to make a slight correction. It came out in 1998. This is it stands alone as a great movie, But for crucial reasons, this is one of the best. No, this is the best film adaptation of a book, and I look forward to getting to those details later. But if we can't say anything else in these 30 seconds, I would like to say you should just watch the movie, because if this animated great slipped past your childhood, you would get really nostalgic for something maybe you've never seen before.
Jacob, I'm not going to lie. My argument revolved around having Jeff Goldblum in my movie, and now I find that you also have him. Just kidding.
Well,
it didn't, but I did not realize he was in there. Or
me neither. This is the first time I've looked at the top cast. Val Kilmer voices Moses. Who voices God? I can't see.
It's got to be James Earl Jones.
Is there? Does God talk? I guess in the bush.
Yeah, he's in the bush. I don't mean to go too far over my time, but no, Val Kilmer voices both Moses and God.
Wow.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Blasphemy. Okay, I will give my pick the best pick because it is the best book to movie adaptation of all time. The Fellowship of the Ring. Joe has the poster right behind his face as we speak. It was nominated for 13 Academy Awards in 2002, and it won 4 of those. So very impressive there.
It had the only acting nomination for a Lord of the Rings movie.
Who's the nominee?
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Fellowship, I mean, it doesn't need that much explanation. I will get into more details, of course, but it is. Joe mentioned the kind of the differences between a book and a movie, and I'll get into that a little bit, but it does a very good job there. So that is my pick. Mike, you can dictate how things go from here.
Okay, because this is a book to movie debate, I need to hear from each of you, and I hope you've actually read the book that the movie has been adapted from, why you think this specifically, it's a good transition from book to movie. Joe, you can start.
Yeah, I think that obviously a large part of making a book into a movie is kind of salvaging the key points while also being able to cut out the excess. And I think Jurassic Park does a really good job of that. It keeps kind of that main storyline with a few nuanced differences that make it interesting to read the book even after you've seen the movie. So just keeping that plot the same is I think very well done, but it kind of takes the suspense from the book and turns it into just a visual masterpiece in the movie. And I think anyone who's seen Jurassic Park, you could watch it today and still be impressed by just the high caliber, like special effects and everything that go into it, with, just a giant T-Rex that it looks so real. And I think that visual strikingness is what made it great compared to the book. Well, after the book.
All right. P.O. Egypt.
I think this is the best adaptation because the source material it draws from is in such a it's in such a style that it gains the most from the visual adaptation. Like a more contemporary Western style novel is going to include a lot of imagery, and the characterization is going to be really rich because that's how we value our stories. But that wasn't the case thousands and thousands of years ago. So coming from that perspective, it gains the most from having really rich animations showing the basket with Moses floating down the river, or actually seeing the legions of Jews being oppressed, or the pillar of fire crashing down from heaven, or the best part visually, the parting of the sea. It is easily the most refreshing, or I guess you get a lot more payoff from seeing that visual than you would from seeing the T-Rex on screen, or seeing Hogwarts for the first time, because you already have from the books really rich images in your head, and you didn't have that from reading Exodus in the first place. So that's why it's the best adaptation, because going strictly to the medium on principle, it gains the most.
All right, David.
Yeah, those are good points, Jacob. But I think on the other end of that, Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship, is so packed with description and epicness and how vast the world of Middle Earth is that you, at the time, especially in 2001, I think that's when it came out, you wouldn't expect a movie to be able to pull that off. And the visual representation of the book and the scale and the CGI that was revolutionary at the time with Weta Workshops and Weta Digital and everything, it was just so impressive that they were able to pull that scale off of Middle Earth and use so many different technologies to create what is an amazing, beautiful world that is realistic and is just totally revolutionary in the industry. So I think that The Fellowship did a really good job of capitalizing on that complexity from the book compared to this more simple story from Exodus. So on top of that, I think that there are definitely lots of changes from the book, and hardcore book fans might be, mad about some of those changes, but you can't look at The Fellowship as a single movie solely because it's part of a trilogy. And some of the things that they took out of the book were included in The Two Towers. Even Radagast, the main character they took out of the Fellowship movie that was in the book, they put in The Hobbit instead. So there's lots of little things like that I think they actually the writers did a really good job of kind of splitting it up and putting it into a digestible 3 hours, however long it is, because there's so much material they had to work with. So those are some of my initial thoughts on that.
All right. And David, you kind of threw out a couple of these, but I'd love to hear also what's one thing that they changed from the book to the movie that you think was a good thing, a good change. Joe, just testing your knowledge of the actual Jurassic Park book.
Can you repeat the question again? What was it?
Yeah, was there anything that they changed in the movie from the book that you actually think was an improvement?
Man, I even read the book last summer, and I still can't really think of like the main differences. Man, I know that they changed the characters around a lot and cut out the excess characters, which I think is important in any book, because like you said earlier, like you have to do all this character development for all these different characters, and it's a lot easier to do with a smaller cast. So in the book, there's a ton of people on the island, not just like the 10 central people like there are in the movie. And I think that is just a great adaptation because it took it to where now these like 6 to 10 characters are fighting for their life and you care about all of them, versus in the book, it's like, oh, this guy that you met and have some pages of dialogue with, like you can't have that in the movie. So I think that was a pretty crucial change that they made.
Good answer. Jacob, did they change anything?
Yeah, well, they maybe I can address later how Prince of Egypt is great because the story it comes from is short and you don't really leave anything out. But if anything, I think they really style thing really. The Red Sea isn't actually as big as it is in the movie, and I'm pretty sure they didn't have the absolutely massive statues of the pharaoh standing up in Egypt, but you can just look at a few of the establishing shots and just be blown away. Like it's some of the best animation to come out of that era, just because being in that time in history and in that part of the world, it allows for so much style and rich art that it can just look so distinct on the screen. So that's the first big that's the big image I would draw, or difference I would draw. It just nothing probably looked like that. Although there's not really any imagery not that much imagery in Exodus to begin with.
And they probably weren't constantly singing.
We don't know that. So.
Dave, Lotter Fotter. Is that the short version?
Loader Foder.
Loader Foder.
Well, I think the first thing that came to mind was in the Fellowship book, Gandalf leaves to go research the ring at Minas Tirith. There's also a lot of more things on that trip with Gandalf. Like he's going to hunt for Gollum because he thinks Gollum still has the ring, with Aragorn and some other stuff like that. But he's gone for 9 years before he returns and comes back to Frodo and tells him what the ring actually is. And so that's definitely a positive change from the book to the movie, and just like an example of the condensing that has to happen in the story. Because in the movie, you assume it's probably like a month, since if he has to ride that far to Gondor and back. But that's kind of a crazy change there, the 9 years to 1 month, but it works in the movie and you don't second guess it at all. There's lots of little things like Pippin and Merry don't actually set off the fireworks, in the Shire, and Gandalf's in on Bilbo's little trick when he puts the ring on in the Shire, and little things like that. But there's even some things that happen in the Fellowship book later on that they included and explained in the prologue, like lots of stuff with Gollum and things like that. So there are lots of little changes like that, but that's the biggest one I can think of, is that the time difference.
Do we have any rebuttals or arguments amongst the debaters?
Yeah, I want to say that at the end of the day, well, I won't get that far ahead. The fact that Lord of the Rings is so long is a great point against it, I think, because one of the great parts about Middle Earth is the richness of it and the history of it, but you lose so much of it going into a short story format like a movie. And so while they are amazing, it's an amazing movie, it's not serving the book that well. I mean, if you're just looking for the story, you got to be, for it to be the best adaptation, you got to be torn, or at least like not confidently, but like you got to be willing to say the movie is the better version of that story, or is at least as good. But I'm not sure that you would say that about Lord of the Rings. You would probably say that if you want the story and you don't have any limits on anything else, you should read the book instead, because it has everything about Middle Earth, and you see more of the characters, and there's just more depth to everything. And so I think just the constraints of having to cut through all of that story to make a movie, while it's still a great movie, is not a great adaptation compared to something like my pick or Joe's. Joe's is a shorter book, but mine's even shorter. So you're getting all the details when you watch Prince of Egypt.
I don't think that is true with Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship. Like, the book itself is a lot slower, a lot longer. Even a 3-hour-long movie like The Fellowship still feels a lot more action-packed and condensed and less boring than the book does. I feel like the book has so much in it, but there's lots of slow dialogue and really long, especially the Counts of Elrond is what comes to mind from the book. It's just like, I don't remember how many chapters. It's a lot of pages long. And in the movie, it's only a 10-minute scene or so. I feel like the movie condensed everything perfectly so that it's like the perfect pace. It's still action-packed. You don't get bored. And I mean, yeah, it's 3 hours long, but 3 hours of some of the best cinema ever.
Yeah, but that's still a crucial difference. Is if the source material leaves you being bored in some parts, and if the dialogue drags sometimes, and then the movie doesn't, you're losing accuracy. And I think that should be a big part of the of a book to movie adaptation.
So you think any detail left out of a book in a movie adaptation is a bad thing?
Yeah, it should be. I mean, of course, it's not perfection. Is so you can't hardly attain it, but ideally, you should want to include everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy to say looking at a short book of Exodus with not that many details. But I mean, Joe in his opening statement said that there's certain things that need to change in a book to movie adaptation. So some of that is cutting down the material. And in our previous discussion, Ready Player One, the movie, changes a lot from the book and doesn't do it successfully. But I know that The Fellowship did do it successfully and cut out the right things that didn't impact, the main points of the story.
Yeah.
I cut out there for a little bit, but I'm not even concerned because I'm still going to take this home. But I actually had a few points I wanted to bring up, or one point in particular, and that's that when you take a book and make it into a movie, the book is kind of like the author is taking you where he wants you to go. And sometimes when they take a book and make it into a movie, the author's not involved. And that kind of makes this discrepancy between like where the author originally wanted you to go. And I think that in the case of The Lord of the Rings, here's a quote from Christopher Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien's son. They eviscerated the book by making it an action movie for young people aged 15 to 25. And there's only one solution for me: to turn my head away. So I think things like that make it seem like the book, the movie just didn't realize what Tolkien may have wanted with his book.
Is that the same guy who's publishing every unpublished thing that J.R.R. wrote?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's not directly from J.R.R. Tolkien, so
He's trying to cash in.
How involved was Michael Crichton with the Jurassic Park movie?
Well, he wrote the screenplay for it, I believe. He was very directly involved because actually Michael Crichton is one of the only people to ever have the #1 movie as a screenplay writer, #1 book as Jurassic Park, and #1 TV show in ER all during the same year. And he did it twice. Because he did it with Jurassic Park, and then he did it with Lost World the next year. So pretty impressive. But yeah, I mean, so that just kind of is to my point that at least with Jurassic Park, that the author got exactly what they wanted out of the movie because he was a direct part of it. And with the Bible, do we know that God wanted Prince of Egypt to be made? Who knows?
Or Moses wrote it, right?
Yeah,
I guess.
Probably. But
divinely inspired.
Yeah, you would hope. You'd hope.
All right, I have some points. So we brought up Rotten Tomatoes scores on several movie debates. I think it's one of Jared's favorite points in argument. Let me read you these scores.
Just as good as you reading definitions out of the dictionary.
Yeah. Hopefully better. Jurassic Park, 92 critic, 91 audience. Fellowship, 91 critic, 95 audience. The Prince of Egypt, 79 critic, 76 audience. The scores speak for themselves, boys.
No, they don't. That's a lie. And you have no actual point in those numbers.
What did you say Prince of Egypt has? 70?
79, 76.
That's surprising.
And it's not what we're debating. We're debating what the best adaptation is. So you've got to go with I think all of your points have to be tied to the source material.
No, not all.
In relation to the relation, it's got to be in the relation to the book that it's coming from. So, yeah, it's the Prince of Egypt is. Speaking to what Joe said, it really what might be the most surprising about the film is how well it matches the tone of Exodus, in that there is a ton of death and brutality. And so I sympathize with Tolkien's son when he has problems with how he saw Lord of the Rings adapted to have a totally different tone and an overall feel to it, because that's just as important as characters, or maybe even a plot, or like the lessons you get from a story, is just the place that it takes you to and the way it makes you feel. And Prince of Egypt does that really well by making sure to include the Angel of Death, and making sure to include the death of the Egyptian soldiers, and the showing the scenes of the Jews in slavery, and it all is
showing the song and dance.
Okay.
I was obsessed with that song for a long time. I certainly know every word. I certainly know every word to it. No doubt.
It's so good. I was spending a lot of time last week just listening to "Deliver Us." I tried to convince Jared that it was as good, if not better, than Circle of Life.
Oh.
And he wouldn't have it. But yeah, there's singing and there's music in the Prince of Egypt. But that's part of the medium. That's not like making a statement on the story. So it's just an even more effective and engaging way to tell a story. You can make someone more effectively feel the pain of Moses' mother, or the joy of Jethro and his family and around the campfire. Yeah. I think that's said enough good things. I think I don't want to hog.
Joe, will you tell me why Jurassic Park's a better adaptation than The Fellowship? I just don't know what points you can make to prove that.
Well, aside from the author point I made earlier, like I said in the beginning, you have to have different things between the movie and the book. And I think that the two things that the movie has that the book doesn't are the visuals, obviously, and also the music. And I think Fellowship could definitely give Jurassic Park a run for the money on music. But I mean, Jurassic Park has John Williams, and the song da 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 da. That's just like, oh, you see the dinosaurs for the first time. That's great stuff. And having John Williams in that movie is a definite plus. And then visually, I mean, Fellowship of the Ring it's good, and like having New Zealand as a backdrop and seeing all the visual effects are great. But the first time you see a dinosaur on a movie screen back in 1995, which obviously I saw when I was 3 years old, just kidding. But like, I can just imagine what that was like for people to see these giant dinosaurs, a T-Rex just roaring as the banner falls at the end of the movie. That kind of stuff just makes it such a visually striking movie. And it's why Jurassic Park was made to be a movie, and they kind of lucked out in having the technology at the time to make it look realistic, and it still looks realistic today.
That's a hard battle. I think the fight between the scores of Jurassic Park and Fellowship of the Ring,
It would be tough.
I mean, that's a stalemate.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there debating in my head during your argument, which I would pick. I don't think I could pick one.
Yeah.
But I think, Hans Zimmer wrote the score for Prince of Egypt.
Did he really? God, man, that dude's everywhere.
Yeah. Oh no, the Prince of Egypt one is great as well.
Yeah,
It's a chariot race, or when Moses and Ramses are riding those chariots through and destroying the Sphinx and whatever they do. Like, there's some amazing music during that.
That's
not
awesome.
to mention the songs that have lyrics to them.
Yeah, awesome. You got. Give me one sec. So the song they played in the credits, the theme song, I guess, is sung by Boys to Men. You got a song by Amy Grant. When
Now
You
you're
Believe,
digging- now
one
you're
of the big
digging
songs
yourself.
is
Now you're digging a hole.
Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. So I mean, this song is or this as far as music, this movie is absolutely stacked. And
those songs you're listing there, those are like the pop versions of the songs that are actually in the movie.
right, yeah.
Lesser versions of them.
Well, I mean, okay, it's not like the score, but like it. Amazing vocal performances, nonetheless. And it kind of.
But Dave, what does Fellowship of the Ring have?
May it be.
Yeah, and
And
sorry, Jacob.
That will make you cry every time.
Sorry, Jacob.
It's good, but like I think what the biggest detriment of the Prince of Egypt is that it was just not very popular. I think if we all, Joe, if you grew up on this movie, and if I had a little bit more, I've seen it maybe 2.5 times in my life. But like, if you watched it as much as you did Lord of the Rings,
Yeah, well.
Maybe we might be singing the praises of this soundtrack more than Lord of the Rings or Jurassic Park. I think when you start to go into like the greatness of just the magnitude and the wonders of a work of art, a lot of it is just like your perspective and the way it's been associated with you for your life. And that is a hard battle in this group with Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean?
It is. I'm getting emotional just thinking about the cast's journey in New Zealand for those 6 years. And those relationships they formed are so close.
The little people they played chess with.
Yeah.
Look, all three of these movies are some of my favorite movies. So it's hard to knock any of them. But when it comes to adapting something, the visuals of Jurassic Park, man, that's what's got to take the cake.
Well, the visuals of Jurassic Park were very impressive, but the visuals of The Fellowship also equally as impressive, with the cave troll and the Watcher in the water and the other creatures that were CGI. I think just as revolutionary as the dinosaurs.
Well, while they may have taken more animating ability, I think the visuals of Prince of Egypt are more important because you never had them from the story when you first read it. You know?
Well, I know.
I feel like I'm making sense, but I feel like I'm not getting any feedback from you guys.
It's a tough debate because it's hard to really quantify,
Of course.
and to compare these three. They're very, very, very different movies. Do we want to get to closing statements? I don't really have any more questions, I don't think.
Yeah, let's do closing statements, I guess.
All right, we'll start with what order were we doing? Let's start with Joe.
All right. Like I said, you need to have the author's participation to make it great as an adaptation, which Jurassic Park does. You also need the music, and I think all three of these are probably pretty even on music. Hans Zimmer did do a great job with that one. And then you also need the visuals, and just the most visually striking movie out of all three of these, without the need for animation even, is Jurassic Park in its ability to make real live dinosaurs. I think that's what makes it the best adaptation.
All right, Jacob.
The Prince of Egypt is the best adaptation because what it's coming from is so pure and simple. And with that, it allows a movie to be comfortable, not having to shrink anything down, and even go into more depth on the characters and the world around it. And even more from it being basically just a transcribing of like an oral tradition of a story passed down. The Prince of Egypt gives this story visuals like it had never had before, and it allows you to see the story for really the first time if you're kind of our age. We didn't watch the 10 Commandments, but if you read Jurassic Park or you read Lord of the Rings, you're inundated with the way things look and the way things feel and the way things sound. And when you read Exodus, you don't. You kind of get the way things happened. But when you finally see the movie, a medium designed to make you really get more of the senses, namely just vision and sound, the Prince of Egypt capitalizes on that and fleshes out what written word couldn't do. And that's why it's the best adaptation of a book.
All right, thank you, David.
So there are a few different aspects to this debate, like we've mentioned. I think the first is how good the book is. According to Wikipedia, Fellowship, or The Lord of the Rings, is the third best-selling single-volume book of all time, 150 million sales. I don't think anybody would argue.
Is it behind the Bible?
Yeah.
Maybe. But I don't think anybody would argue the impact that The Lord of the Rings had on the fantasy genre. I know that Game of Thrones was influenced directly by Tolkien's work and many other fantasy books. And then there's the movie side of it, which the Fellowship movie nominated for 13 Oscars. That kind of speaks for itself. Won 4. The movie itself is incredible and one of the best movies ever made. And then the transition between the two, the adaptation, like I talked about, the way that they actually justified the epicness of Middle Earth and showed the vastness of that world in a beautiful way, in a cool way, an action-packed way, as well as an in-depth character-building way for the first part in a trilogy. Yeah, Joe gave the quote from Tolkien's son saying he didn't like it, but I'm sure from how much money it made, he's liking it now. But yeah, I don't want to repeat anything I already said, but
how many Oscars did they win out of the 13 nominations?
It won 4. So it won Best Cinematography, Visual Effects, Makeup, Original Score. Did Jurassic Park win score?
Jurassic Park won 3. Yeah, it was visual effects, sound mixing, and sound editing. So,
who won score that year? That's a tragedy.
Yeah, dang.
Yeah.
Did Prince of Egypt get nominated for songs or score or anything? I bet it did.
I think it did, actually.
Find out. We can cut this dead space out or not. I don't care. Winner, Best Music, Original Song, When You Believe.
Okay.
Nominee for Best Music.
Miracles.
It was nominated for Best Music, Original Musical, or Comedy Score.
Okay, that's when they used to separate. They used to give out 2 awards for score.
Yeah.
One for music.
It was a nominee for Golden Globe for Best Score and Best Original Song.
Golden Globe.
Yeah, those don't count.
Hey, it was the winner of the Dallas-Fort Worth Film Critics Association Award for Best Animated Film.
Perfect, you win.
So y'all back the F down.
I found out why Jurassic Park didn't win score. It's because it was the same year that Lion King, Shawshank Redemption, and Forrest Gump all came out.
What
won?
Year.
Lion King?
Lion King, Shawshank, and Forrest Gump, and Little Women.
Who won?
Oh, I can't tell. It just gave the list. I'll find it.
Typically, if there's one in bold, that means it won.
Yeah, it was like a weird list.
Yeah. Okay.
Mike, do you have a winner?
I think so.
Or a fourth and third? No, there's only 3 of us. Third and second place. First, I guess.
Yeah. This was tough, as I said a little earlier, because it's really hard to compare these 3, especially because I have only read 2 of the 3. No, sorry. I have not read 2 of the 3 books that we are discussing. The only one I have read is the Bible,
I was going to say.
Specifically the Book of Exodus. I maybe haven't read the entire Bible, but I have certainly read the story of Moses. So some of those judges I still need to dive into a little bit.
Right, yeah.
Judges and prophets. Anyway, I'll start off. I'm going to give third place to Jurassic Park and Joe. As much as I love that movie, it was hard for me to even tell if you'd read the book or not.
I have. I read it last night.
based on your argument. I don't know. I appreciated your argument about the author being involved, but I don't really feel like that is an essential thing as far as adapting a book to a movie. In fact, it could be a detriment, as we have seen with Ready Player One. Which I know we talked about that earlier, but it does seem like Ready Player One was more of like inspired by the book as opposed to actually based on the book, which is really a big difference. But anyway, I digress. Second place. This one's very tough. I'm gonna have to give second place to The Prince of Egypt.
Oh,
Jacob, when I first saw via our text thread that you had chosen that, I was like, man, that is a brilliant choice. However, I didn't necessarily think that your arguments were the best, especially when you said you want that in adapting a book to a movie, you want to include everything, was one of the things you said, every detail. And I don't really think that is something that should be something necessary when adapting a book to a movie, because in fact, it is an adaptation and not a word-for-word recreation. Though The Prince of Egypt is an incredible adaptation of the Book of Exodus, I don't necessarily think that your argument as to why was the best argument.
fair enough.
So that leaves a lot of fodder. Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Who would have thought Hostel Discourse would have glorified Lord of the Rings?
And I think, David, one of your best points was in regards to the Count of Elrond. You discussed how long it is in the book, but in fact, in the movie, it is a mere probably 15 minutes. And honestly, one of the best parts of the movie. I think the feat that it took, as you described, to transfer that gigantic book to a 2.5 hour, 3 hour movie was in fact an incredible feat that was well done, despite the fact that J.R.R. Tolkien's son may not have liked it. It still, as you said, rings true to sort of the heart of the book, and is an incredible movie in and of itself. So therefore, I'm sorry, Jacob, and you kind of mentioning how Fellowship of the Ring is sort of the love of this group, but I think David did do the best to describe why it was the best adaptation of the three that we discussed.
Well, I can't
Thank
argue.
you.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't. I gave you guys an opportunity to say The Fellowship. I asked you what your picks were before I said mine, so you gave me no choice. I had to choose it.
I feel like I am a horrible judge of my own arguments because every time I feel like I won, I get last place. It's a consistent thing on this show.
Yeah.
Well, I also found out the real reason why John Williams didn't win for Jurassic Park. It's because he won for Schindler's List that year.
No, he was competing against himself.
Yeah.
Wow.
And probably the better score won. So.
Huh. Cool. Well, thank you, Mike, for judging. Hope you enjoyed listening to our arguments.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Jacob and Joe, for coming back as always.
No problem. Glad to do it.
And I'm glad to be back. I was sad to be gone 2 weeks ago, but we should be back on schedule. Every 2 weeks is the schedule. Every other Friday. Thank you, Luke Cool for Gaming, for joining us on the YouTube stream. His choice was Jurassic Park, by the way, Joe. So he was rooting for you. You can join us on the live stream every week. We record. We put out the link on social media, so you can check us out there if you want to participate in the live chat. Let me think. No, I don't think there's anything to announce. Oh yeah, the Avengers Infinity War episode will be next, I believe, in 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that.
Let's go.
But we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Let me be on the record right now. Spider-Man will die in this movie.
Oh man,
That's pretty cool.
That's my hot prediction.
will Chewbacca die in the Han Solo movie? Because the previews leave that hanging.
It would be better if it did.
Do they really?
Oh yeah.
I think if I could tease a future open season segment, I just want to claim the argument that Chewbacca is not only the worst part about the original trilogy, he's a worse version of Jar Jar Binks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we'll save that for the end of May Han Solo episode, I guess. Open season.
Another movie I am obliged to not see.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting more excited for that movie every day.
Okay.
The commercials are
Bye,
real fun.
everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Stopping recording.
Same.
The Han Solo movie is starting to look much more like just sort of a fun action movie than this like tell the whole backstory of Han.
Yeah, it is.
Which I'm getting increasingly excited about.
This is episode 34. If you want to save it as your name, episode 34. All right. Okay. Gonna end the live stream. Thank you, those who tuned in. Bye-bye.
Bye.